Hey, teachers and parents. So, in this episode, I'm so excited. We are talking to Cherith Glover Fluker, a former teacher turned instructional coach and assistant principal who works in the ed tech space. And she also has a fantastic blog called What Cherith Thinks. And I highly recommend her blog post on journaling in the morning. Absolutely loved it. And because Cherith works at different schools, she has valuable insights into areas that are going right and areas that might need to consider some changes. So I'm really excited for you to listen in on this conversation. Cherith, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Happy to be here.
Awesome. Great. I'd love it if you could start maybe by telling us just how your journey began and what eventually prompted you to sort of shift out of just general teaching.
Okay, so you kind of gave a little bit into my background. I have what I call took a non-traditional approach to being a teacher. I graduated with a degree in English from Auburn University and left thinking that I was going to do this writing career. I was focused on technical writing. Had a baby, started working at the front desk of a school district. I was the receptionist for about a year before people started telling me you'd make a great teacher, you should consider teaching. So I actually started teaching, went back and got my master's degree in education, and taught for
Wow.
several years and absolutely loved it. So it's kind of one of those things where I fell into a career that I didn't even know that I needed for several reasons. It was just a great for me. I love the connections that I made with teachers, with students, loved seeing the impact that I was making, loved collaborating with other teachers and learning more about how to be a better teacher and all of those things. Continued studying my administrative degree. So then I left the classroom after
Okay.
about 11 years, taught high school for 11 years, and then I went to be an elementary school
Oh, well, that's quite a shift.
administrator. Yes. So it was very much so a shift. Now, the whole time that I was teaching, or most of the time that I was teaching high school, I also taught classes at the local junior college. So I feel like I have been in so many different areas of education, but I feel like all of these things happened the way that they did to prepare me for the space that I'm in now. I now work in the ed tech space. I work for
Okay.
a company that offers core intervention and supplemental solutions across all grade levels and across different subject levels. And I work with schools all over the United States. So just like I said, my career has just kind of built its way to where it is. And I feel like all of the experiences that I've had and all of the people that I've met have prepared me to be successful in this space.
Yeah, definitely. So basically, like when you go into schools, are you working to bring in sort of technology that can help the kids in the school with specific subjects, or
So
can
we
the
have
kids
print
also
and digital.
access? Yeah, go
We have
ahead.
print and digital resources. And what I do is I work with school districts to help them implement the products and solutions that they purchase from us. So I
Okay.
work with district level administrators, teacher leaders to just talk about the best ways to implement their products. And not only do I help them to plan that implementation, but I also manage that implementation from start to finish. So we sit down, we have, of course, periodic meetings to see how things are
Yeah.
going, to see what we need to change. We set goals, review how we're doing toward those goals. I get to go into classrooms and observe teachers. So I still get that aspect of being in schools, working with teachers, seeing
Yeah.
students, but I get to do it on such a larger scale and just to see how school works in different ways and just noticing how as different as we think we are, school is school no matter where we are. So I really enjoy that part of it and getting to meet lots of new people and making relationships with people all over.
Absolutely. And I like, so teachers must be really excited to, use your products for the students. Are they focused on mostly literacy, or their literacy in math, or does
Both,
it
both.
cover? Amazing. Okay,
Yes,
that's
we
so
all
good.
subjects. Yes, yes.
And can the students access the information outside of school, or is it mainly to be done inside the school?
Well, it depends on how the district so chooses to use it. So the implementations
Okay.
look different everywhere. A lot of it is done at schools, but we do still have districts that do allow students to work on it from home. It's a great thing for distance learning became really popular during the pandemic.
Yeah.
We have students who are on long-term absences for school for different reasons, whether it's hospital or, other challenges that they may be facing, alternative schools, lots of different ways that our products can be implemented. And those implementations
That's
look different in lots of places.
That's so good. So, can you think of like any success stories where you went into a school and they were really like, oh my gosh, like we're really finding like this particular area challenging, and how you were able to bring them some sort of relief in that area and help them out?
Yeah, I guess one of the biggest things for me is that for younger teachers and for tech savvy teachers, it's a no-brainer, right? They're very excited about implementing, but sometimes we have teachers who are not as tech savvy and who may be, more seasoned in their career, who are a little bit apprehensive because obviously they have a lot of experience. Their experience is valuable and needed. So sometimes it's difficult to get them to see things from a different perspective. And I actually like having those challenges because being able to see reluctant teachers embrace the strategies and embrace
Mm,
the product and seeing how it can be successful and how they can see success with students and how they're able to connect with students in ways that they maybe weren't able to, because we know there's such a big gap. Students are so different. Teachers, our more seasoned teachers have kind of their ways of doing things, and they've seen success with it. So if you're doing things and they're working, you might have that attitude of why fix what's not broken, but just trying, getting them to look at things a different way. So I've had a couple of or more stories of, and those are my favorite ones, is seeing those teachers who kind of felt like they knew it all. Uh,
yeah,
and I was
I know
one of
what you
those
mean. I
teachers,
was too.
after
Yeah.
you've done it this way and you've had your plans and things are working just right. It's been nice to be able to see them implement these new things and to kind of, embrace this new way of learning, hear their success stories, and hearing them say, I never thought I'd be able to do this, or hearing them or seeing them really struggle with the technology. And after coaching them for some time, seeing them have kind of a different approach and feeling a little bit more confident and more comfortable, because that's what it's all about. Teachers want to be confident and they want to know more than their students. And,
Yeah.
just being able to, again, help them embrace different ways of doing things it's very good to see. And it's very rewarding to see those reluctant teachers have a different attitude about implementing different things into their classrooms.
Yeah, and I think it's valuable, for even like older teachers to really embrace that concept of lifelong learning, and that change is okay, and it's not as hard as you think if you just keep trying, and there's
Right.
always support out there to help you if you do have to make a change with how you've always done it.
Yeah.
But don't shut yourself off to that,
Right.
because I just find like with teachers that tended to do that I worked with, they lose a lot of that connection with their students as well, because they're doing it always, it's the same, it's, very routine. So I think that's great that you're bringing that in. And if you had a new teacher, if you had a teacher who was like listening to this and was like, okay, this sounds really amazing for my school, um, and the admin was reluctant, would the best thing to do be to contact you and be like, look, could you just try and pitch this to my admin? Or do you have to get the admin on board first, do you think, if I were a teacher? What would be the best way for me to try and get a program like this implemented?
That's a great question. And I think that it's really important that teachers understand that they need to advocate for themselves. I think that's important for a couple of reasons. As I mentioned earlier, I was an administrator, and as much as school administrators try to act like it, um, it's really hard to act like it. They try to act like it isn't this. Um, when you're not in the classroom anymore, it's
Mm-hmm.
really difficult to remember what it's like to be in the classroom. I feel like the longer that you're separated from the classroom, the more you forget what it's like to be a teacher. So you need to communicate so that you know what their challenges are, you know what
Yes.
they need. And so teachers kind of they have to advocate for themselves, go to administrators. If they're trying things in their classroom, they're using the curriculum that's in place and they're still needing more support, I feel like it's absolutely in their best interest to advocate to let administrators know what's going on. Administrators do try, for the most part, to get in classrooms as much as they can, but I don't know if you've been in a school lately. There's so much going on, so many challenges that keep
Yeah.
administrators from being able to actually get into the classrooms and see what's going on and see what the need is. So I think that the more that they have that open line of communication with their teachers to be able to determine what the best thing is. Sometimes it's just coaching. And our, there are companies out there that offer coaching for teachers, and that has been really successful and really embraced by teachers, just because they have someone who's really just focusing on teaching and learning. They're not focused on all the other administrative tasks that principals and assistant principals have to deal with. So it's someone that can be dedicated to them, to collaborate with them, to help with planning, and to just collaborate when it comes to ideas, give them feedback on what they're doing, suggest tools that they can be using. So I think that's really important. Yes, they do need to reach out to their administrators and just let them know, hey, I need support. Maybe you can help me find the resources that I need, or maybe you can put me in, connect me with those folks that can focus on what I need in my classroom.
I think that's perfectly said, because it's not like, I always say, especially now, when you go into your administrator with a problem, have a solution in your head. Like, at least your solution may not be the solution they want, but if you at least go in with a possible solution, they might be like, okay, that sounds good, just go with it, right? Like, this is the
Right.
person you can talk to. So if you say, this is the problem I'm having, I don't know if you have any advice on how to help me with it, but maybe you could put me in touch with someone who could. I would really appreciate it. Or who could I speak to? Then at least you're coming with a potential solution,
Right.
which I think can help a lot for when you do need to advocate for yourself. That's always, I learned that later in my teaching career, but it has helped. It has helped a lot. And I know it's sometimes difficult, but if your admin isn't helpful, ask other teachers. Maybe
Yes.
you've got that safe space with other teachers. Be like, who do you think I could speak to? Where could I go? There's like even Facebook groups, or contacting teachers on Instagram. They're like, I noticed you do this really well, this classroom
Yes.
management thing. Like,
So
could
many
I talk?
resources out there
There's
now.
so, yeah, there's so
Yes.
many resources. Never think that you're alone in what you're going through. And like, there's a lot you can't control right now with the schools, for sure, especially all the, what the government's deciding about what schools should and shouldn't do, and parents and things like that. But there are some things you can control. So I
And I think
think,
that's really important for teachers. One thing that I have
yeah,
noticed is going from school to school is that we do have so many teachers who are in our classrooms who don't have a traditional education background. So they're learning that on top of trying to learn how, like they're learning how to be a teacher, learning the subject matter. So it is a lot going on. And like you said, there are so many resources available. Speaking up, asking people, collaborating with people who are doing it well. I think that's a great approach.
yeah, no, 100%. So are you saying that you're seeing that there's teachers, when you say not having an education background, that they weren't going to be a teacher, or
Right.
they
And so
studied
they
to
may
do
be doing
something
some,
else?
right. So they may be doing an alternative certification and they're still working on
Okay.
that. So there's an increase. I've seen that myself in several schools where there are uh, people who are trained to some other profession, but have now decided that they want to be a teacher. So they're, getting an
Okay.
alternative certification and they're in classrooms.
Okay, so that must be, yeah, that's quite an adjustment.
It
Definitely. I
is an
can
adjustment.
imagine
Absolutely.
that's interesting. With regards, because I know you were talking about the literacy side, and you've taught high school as well. So I'd love to get your feedback on this. So one thing I've been noticing in a lot of the articles I read or posts that I'm looking at on social media is that there are the gaps with reading ability seems to be quite a lot bigger than it used to be. And I'd love to get your thoughts on that, and maybe strategies that teachers could use that you might suggest if they did have these quite large gaps, whether it's in the high school or the primary school. What do you think?
Yeah, I bet after the pandemic and when, the world was shut down,
Yeah.
a lot of teachers argue that that gap was widened during that time. And I believe that just because we know that school during that period looked very different for people or for students based on the support that they had at home. You know, you
Right.
had some students who were, it was business as usual, and some students had some challenges, whether it was technology or whether it was someone there to support them. So we did get back, when we got students back into the classroom, we got a lot of different
Like
students now,
levels and
so
students. Yeah,
whereas
different
we were
students.
whereas we were facing those challenges before, I'd argue that the gaps were probably wider when they returned. Um, just thinking about me and my classroom, I think the hardest thing to do was to try to figure out how to really give every student in my classroom the opportunity to learn. That's really important. When you have so many different reading levels, you definitely want to respect them as students and not do things like, you don't necessarily have to have a different text, but you can approach that text differently. So, like if you're reading a novel, I taught high school, so I'm
Hmm.
just thinking about teaching novels, thinking about scaffolding my instruction so that every student can benefit. So whether they're read alouds and not necessarily having the students read aloud, but maybe listening to a portion of a text that may be more difficult and building meaning and focusing instead of so much on characters and the plot, thinking more of like the skills that I can teach them so that they can become better readers and decode things and figure things out as they're reading other texts. So I think it's important to scaffold, make sure that with every um, lesson that you have, you're thinking about something visual, something where they have to write, just so that you're giving every student in that classroom an opportunity to shine. So where I may be a visual learner, I'm going to add things like maybe anchor charts to bring my points across so that that student who needs that visualization, partnering students with students who are stronger, thinking about different ways to assess students so that you're not really relying on one test to
Hmm.
measure the success of every student. I'm not a strong test taker, but I can write all day long. So if you had, just
Yeah.
giving different opportunities for every student to be successful. When you do those assessments, really paying attention to the results so that you can
Hmm.
see where students are. That's so important. Going into it, where is this student so that you can address and pinpoint the needs of that kid in all of your lessons.
Yeah, I love that. And I think just to target a few things you said there with regards to teaching them the skills, because I know we mentioned this in our previous conversation, but I think you don't always necessarily need them to read the entire book. I mean, these days it's difficult for students to read
And
an
that's
entire book.
hard for high school teachers. It's
Yeah, it is
really
hard.
hard for high school teachers because
It's
we
a
want to
hard,
read the entire Canterbury,
yes.
the entire Great Gatsby. We want,
Yeah.
but you're right. You don't have to do that. We've learned that it's
Yeah.
so important to be like the skill so that they can transfer that skill to other subjects, to other texts. Yes, you're
Yes,
absolutely
exactly. Like rather focusing on getting a lot of different genres where the voice is different or the purpose is different, instead of just focusing on one novel and really looking at how you can build those skills of like finding the main idea. One thing I always liked with my high school students were the keywords. So you always, I find, because of the lack of reading that, and especially now, the vocabulary is far lower.
yeah,
So putting up keywords before any lesson that you have so that the kids can spot, what the keywords are, I think helps a lot because it does give them a little bit more understanding, even if they are a weaker reader.
right.
And that I think that to me, when the kids get the keywords, because I'm actually surprised sometimes how many of my students don't know how to use a thesaurus or, and that's the first thing I put on their iPads is like
Right,
thesaurus.com.
right,
So,
right, right.
but yeah, I think definitely approaching the text differently is key. I should look into that, do a few
Yeah,
Instagram
and
posts on
doing
that.
exactly what you just said, helping them to be resourceful, introducing them to those
Yes.
so that they know that you don't just keep reading if you don't know what's going on. You stop, you make notes, you ask questions, you if there's a word that you don't know, you look it up, just different things like that. Those are different strategies that are very
Yeah.
helpful, and things that, again, they can apply in other subjects and throughout life. It's more important for them to know how to be resourceful than it is for them to know a story from beginning to end and character.
Exactly.
And that's hard. Like I said, it's
Exactly.
really hard for someone who loves literature. So
Yes. No, I completely, I understand. And like, I have a student as well. I realized that when I'm talking to him, he's like, yes, 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 no, yep, no problem. And then I was like, okay, just repeat that back to me. And he was like, I'm not sure. And I said,
right,
okay. I said, so
right.
then I taught him the skill. I was like, when someone is talking to you, ask questions, right? Stop the repeat what they say so that your brain is focusing on what they're saying instead of just, because I think he's learned over time just to be like, yeah, no problem. Yeah, okay. And meanwhile, he's not actually picking up on what you're saying. So that's also a strategy that I've learned with teaching, is just to say, okay, just tell me, just repeat that back to me in your own words.
Yep.
Right. And then you will see if they actually were listening to what you said. If they didn't, say, okay, no problem, like, let's do it again. Right. But I think that focusing on the skills is just so huge. Um, so I was going to say, when teachers, what do you think would be skills that, because we focused on the high school here, do you have any different strategies or resources for primary school teachers that you think would work differently? Or do you think the same things apply, just focusing on the skills?
Definitely having in or tying in those opportunities for small groups. And that's
Yeah.
actually something that is very beneficial. Having those opportunities to be able to work either, one-on-one or in just small groups with students who are struggling in the same areas, having those rotations in your classroom so that, there can be, you teach them something, they go apply it, they practice. I think that's important. And our elementary teachers do a great job with that. I love
Yeah.
going in the classrooms and seeing how they have all these different things going on, but it's still so effective because every student is working on what they need to be working on. They get these different opportunities to practice. So I think that small group instruction intervention is so important to be able to really pinpoint those skills that students need later in high school. So yeah.
Absolutely. No, I think, yeah, with primary school teachers, I feel that like groups is also so important for just the 21st century skills, right? Collaborating, communicating, being able to, sort of not maybe lead, but they do start to develop a little bit of that leadership about how do you
Yes.
speak effectively to people. And in order to get, something accomplished, which
Yes.
is definitely important. And also, Charith, I noticed from your blog that you are really a big advocate for self-care for teachers
Yes.
and looking at teacher burnout. So I definitely want to talk about that. What have you noticed in your traveling to different schools that's causing like teachers to burn out the most? And what are your top advice tips for them?
One thing that I've definitely learned is that teacher burnout is real. Teachers are
Mm,
tired everywhere. And there are a lot of factors that I think play into that. There are a lot of things or expectations that are made of teachers that are difficult. And we as teachers, and I always refer to myself as we because I always feel like I'm a teacher forever,
yeah, of course.
have this need to be perfect or close to perfect.
Yeah.
We want, like, because we care so deeply for our students, we want them all to be successful. And it is frustrating when we can't do it all. And I think that the burnout comes from just working so hard to try to meet the needs of all the students. I think the burnout comes when we try to work alone instead of tapping into the resources that we have, instead of working with other teachers. So that's one of the things that I do recommend, is not working alone,
Mm.
realizing and tapping into the resources that are available to you just via your next door neighbor. You can work with, planning two heads are always better than one, collaborating with other teachers, collaborating with teachers at other schools that may be in your district, asking for help when you need it. That's something that we don't do. Not internalizing our work so much, which I think is kind of an oxymoron, because we definitely, there are those students that keep us up at night always because we
Yes.
want to figure out. I know you can't, but just trying to balance that. not making, I see teachers sometimes that are there an hour before school starts and they're there late in the evenings.
Yeah.
I don't recommend doing that on a regular basis. I know that there are times where you do have to put in those extra hours. I was one of those that used to bring things home with me all the time. I don't recommend doing that all the time. You have to set boundaries. That is like my word for everything when it comes to self-care, is setting those boundaries, enforcing those boundaries, and kind of like demanding that other people respect those boundaries. We can't do it all, even though we want to. We work so hard as teachers, and you will get burnout if you continue to do that. So I think that, finding someone to collaborate with, confiding in someone, venting sometimes when you have to just get it out. Um, and again, advocating for yourself when things are getting tough, let someone know so that you can see what could possibly happen. Like I said, with your
Yeah.
administrators, they don't know that you're feeling away, or they don't know that you're struggling with this if you don't tell them. Not that it's always going to have a solution, but at least someone knows and they can be thinking about ways to support you. We are losing a lot of really great teachers, and I think,
Yeah.
people are kind of shocked by it sometimes because they never heard it. They never heard that this teacher was struggling, or they never heard that this teacher was feeling overwhelmed. So I think that, again, advocating for yourself and just making sure that you reach out for support when you need it.
Yeah, that's so powerful. What are some of because one thing I find with teachers, and this was me for sure, is I don't have the words to say no to someone,
Mm.
right? When they want you to do something. So what are some of if you can think of some of the times that you've had to sort of set a boundary, what's some of the wording that you use if someone asks you to do something instead of just saying, oh no, I
Yeah,
can't,
I have a whole blog post about that. It's called Nice
Oh,
Ways to Say
great.
No. So one of the things that my favorite is, I don't have the capacity to support this. I thank you for thinking of me, but someone else can do this project more justice right now. Like, I just don't have the capacity to pour into it. Or I can do this. I don't mind co-leading this, or I don't mind collaborating with someone on this project, but I can't take it on myself. We have to do that. Like, that is so important. We have to advocate for ourselves. I know that there are times when we absolutely can't say no, but I think more times than not, we certainly can say no. Like, sometimes when you're asked to be like the sponsor for this club, or you're asked to be the cheer coach, and it's not something that you really want to do, we have to say no. We have to,
Yeah.
because it's really going to show in our work when we're not really wanting to do that thing. And it just leads to faster burnout.
Yeah. One thing I heard that I really liked was to sort of have an idea of your key jobs that you're doing. And if someone asks you something, to be like, I would love to help with that, and I'm absolutely happy to help with that, but I can't fit that in right now. So either this or this is going to have to come off of my plate.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So if you'd
Yes.
like to take this or this from me, I can put that in,
Right.
but I don't have I actually don't have the space or the capacity to fit that in without something else suffering. And
Right.
I think if you say to them, like, something else in my job is going to suffer if I do this,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
But I'm happy to do it. I would just need something taken away. So I thought that was
Absolutely.
actually quite, I like that. And I like the venting, like you said, to have that one safe space coworker. Definitely. Don't make all the coworkers your safe space, because
Right. Right.
suddenly everything you said is going on in this, is being circulated
Absolutely.
somehow.
Absolutely. And just sitting back, I think, and reflecting. Sometimes I think we feel overwhelmed and we can't really pinpoint what it is that's overwhelming us. So we can do things like journaling, making
Yeah.
lists, seeing what it is. What is that one thing that gets you to that point where you're feeling like you're at your breaking point? So I think it's just that reflection piece is so important, instead of just kind of going along, because we do that.
Mm-hmm.
Thinking about how you feel when you do certain things. Is it this certain thing that raises my anxiety or gets me stressed out? You need to pinpoint
Exactly.
what it is so that you can know how to approach it and how to navigate next.
Absolutely, absolutely. And writing that down or talking it through. And I'm also a really big proponent of goals. I think have a set of goals for yourself, because sometimes I feel like teachers especially, they are kind of aimless in where they're headed. They know they're supposed to be a teacher, but you're allowed to have goals. You're allowed to have bigger goals.
Yeah,
Then, maybe your goals will still be linking to teachers, but maybe you want to help teachers. Like that's what I came out of teaching, to help, coach teachers with their mindset. And I feel like write down your goals, because when you have that goal and the kids are running through your head at the end of the day, like you were saying earlier, you can stop and be like, what do I want? What are my goals? What do I want out of life? And focus your mind on that. So when you have that focal point, it's, I think, easier to stop your mind from running away with you and
right,
being like so overly concerned about school, when you want to be more concerned about you, taking care
right.
of you
Right.
and
And I
going that
think the
way.
important thing that you just said is we taking care of you. If we don't take care of ourselves, we can't do all of the things that we have to do. So
Exactly.
focusing on you is so important. And it's hard, I feel like sometimes for teachers and moms to really give themselves the love that they give everybody else, or give do for themselves the way they do for others. But it's so important, because if we are not well, then the things that we do are not going to be at the level that we want them to be, just because we're kind of like half in it because we're exhausted. So yes, I think that putting yourself on the list is so important.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I wanted to know, Cherith, before I ask you the final thoughts, is there anything else you want to share? Any other pearls of wisdom that we forgot to discuss today?
No, I think that checking out my blog is great, because I have like some back to school
Yeah, it's a
self-care. I have
brilliant
some
blog.
self-care for teachers, lots of things there, and just self-care in general is something that is near and dear to my heart. There are hundreds of blog posts on there about self-care and just different capacities, and just making sure that you're well in life so that you're okay in your different components of life. You have to make sure that your well-being is okay. So your mental well-being, you have to make sure that everything is okay. So I think it's important to just be in check with yourself all the time so that you know what's going on and you know what needs attention in your life.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Talk to someone, like don't suppress how you're feeling, for sure.
And when it's out
Um,
of your realm, I am not above at all. I know and love and respect the power of therapy. So
yeah,
sometimes we're not able to do it all. So seeking professional help when you know that it is just like you can't do anything else, or you need guidance on how to navigate all of the challenges in life, I think that is important, that we don't forget about the power and the value there.
100%. And I'm, I'm so big on telling my students that, as well as my fellow teachers, because my mom's generation, which is like the boomers, they all suppressed everything, right? There was no such thing as therapy. If you were going to therapy, there was something wrong with you. And
Absolutely.
now it's like, no. If you have a huge gash on your arm, you go to a doctor. But
That's right.
but you've got a gash in your brain or on your heart, you go to a doctor, right?
Right.
Go see
Right.
someone, go talk to someone, go talk to
Right.
someone who can guide you through the potential solutions or what's actually going on, because it will just take such a load off.
Yep.
Thank you. I'm so glad you said that. So other than the your website, are there any other good spots to find you online, or is that where you stick the most?
I'm on my blog all the time, but I also hang out on Instagram. My handle is
Nice.
just my name, Cherith Fluker. And then on Facebook, I have a Facebook page, What Cherith Thinks, that goes along with my blog.
Oh, okay, amazing. So we'll put the link for
Yes.
that as well with your Facebook page. Okay, cool. And okay, so just a few final questions. Are there any books that you would recommend, Cherith, for either personal or professional development?
I think that you will probably already guess Boundaries is my favorite book. I love that book. And I love that it's now branching off into different things. I saw the other day that there's like boundaries for dating, boundaries for
Oh,
mom. Yeah,
cool.
so I love that. That book was so eye-opening for me. I read it and I also listened to it, just because there were so many things in that book that made me go, wow. A lot of things that we think are rude or, protecting or just making you feel okay to set those boundaries. And
Mhm.
I really felt like after I read that book, I'm like, yeah, why don't I do that? Why I need to do this. Like
Mm.
I had a list of things after I finished that book that I needed to do, and I needed to be more adamant about making people respect those boundaries. So my life has changed so much since I read that book, just because I know that I am worth and I am like my boundaries are
Mhm.
validated, and it's okay for me to have those boundaries. So I feel a whole lot better about things like saying no and, you know, that kind of thing after I read that book. So I highly recommend it. Henry Cloud and John Townsend, the
All
authors.
right.
Yeah.
I think also like just linking on that, like for teachers to, try to see if they can't replace the doom scroll with 10 minutes of an audiobook. Do you
Yep.
know what I mean? So
Yep.
that it helps them to sort of just continue with that positive mindset, well, trying to cultivate that positive mindset, because the doom scroll just plants a whole bunch of weeds in the garden of your mind.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, no, I'm glad you said that. Okay, so with mindset, how do you move yourself from a negative mindset to a positive mindset?
I think the biggest thing is being realistic. Instead of saying that I can't do something, thinking of ways that I can realistically achieve that goal, or do that thing, whatever it is. It is easy. Like when I think negative, I try to find a way, like what's positive out of it. You know, I'll give an example, a negative mindset that I had. I'm an empty nester. My kids are off to college. I was really sad about that, but I had to think positively. They're doing what's supposed to happen next in life. Like there would be a
Mhm.
problem if they were still here, if they weren't able to be independent, if they weren't doing things to go after and start their own lives, that would be a problem, right? So instead of being negative about that, I had to think positively that the things that I've done in life to parent them has set them up for this part of life that they're going into. And so anytime I'm having those negative thoughts or I'm feeling unworthy, or if I'm feeling negatively about something, I try to put a positive spin on it. Journaling is really good with that because it's
Mm.
allowing you to reflect it and then sometimes to look back and see how silly you're really being about something,
It's
because
true.
we are so hard on ourselves sometimes. And when I go back and read those things, I'm like, well, how would I expect? What did I do to change this situation? So I think that's really important. Journaling is like a cure for so many things for me, because you will look back and be like, I was really being hard on myself. That was a really unrealistic expectation. So it kind of helps you to have those more positive thoughts. There a lot of times life is so much better than we give it credit for, and people
Yeah.
are so much better than we give them credit for. So I just think it's important reflecting, journaling, being realistic,
Yeah, that's good.
and not being so hard on myself.
100%. I actually grabbed the link for your morning journal prompts, so I'm gonna put that in the show notes, because
Okay.
I was like, I love this. It's always good, because I've seen with some people, they're like, well, I don't know exactly what to write about, or so when they get prompts, it tends to help
Yes,
quite a bit to kind of guide you. And you don't have to do all the prompts, but it's just a good place to start, right? To think of,
absolutely.
even if you have 10
Absolutely.
minutes, it's better than nothing. So,
And prompts are a great way to start. It won't take long before you're like just ready. And just
hmm.
when it's time. And I have journals everywhere. My husband found one in the garage that I had the other day. I have them everywhere. So that whenever I feel the urge, I can just go ahead and get it out. Because a lot of times getting those negative thoughts from your head to paper kind of gives you a clean slate up there so that you can go on
Hmm.
about your day. Sometimes, like I said, venting to that paper and getting the negative thoughts out and just moving on is helpful.
Yeah, no, like 100%. And I think it's a much more positive outlet to use than, say, having
Getting on Facebook and venting about
yeah,
it.
ex exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
Because again, 9 times out of 10, you look back and like, that was really silly that I was having that thought.
Yeah. So true. Um, I wanted to know, so how do you keep yourself calm if things get chaotic? Like, do you have a breath work practice, or are you meditator at all, or what do you like to
I
do to
would
like
love
sort
it.
of
I
calm it
love that
down?
idea of having a breath work practice. I don't necessarily have that, but I do a lot of meditating. Sometimes
Okay.
when I'm in the car, my kids laugh at me, my husband laughs at me, because sometimes I just drive with nothing, no music, no nothing. And I just have kind of a conversation with myself to, again, be realistic about how I'm feeling. It is very natural and very human to be upset and to be angry about things or frustrated about things. I try to be really like thoughtful before I go to approach the person or the thing that has caused me to get there. Because again, you don't want to do things that you're going to regret later, or say things that you're going to regret later. So
Yeah.
again, just having some time to sit and think, and also journaling. That, I
Yes.
mean, a journal is helpful to get those things out too. So yeah, that's one thing that I would say is just really stopping, pausing in the moment when you feel
Yeah.
really frustrated, and not just jumping to a conclusion or doing things that you're going to regret later. So I think just slowing down for a minute, because a lot of times that frustration comes from me, usually self-inflicted, because I put too many things on my calendar, or
Yeah.
I have this expectation of myself and then I don't meet this particular goal, and then I get all frustrated and upset. Just
Hmm.
slowing down. And one thing, like you said about goals, the nice thing about it is that you can readjust those goals. If you don't
Yeah.
meet that goal, okay, so I didn't make it. I didn't reach that goal. What did I do to get to that goal? Maybe, once I start reflecting on that, maybe I didn't necessarily do the things that I said I was going to do. We can take something like weight. If I said I was going to lose this many pounds by this time,
Hmm.
well, how many times did you work out? How many cookies did you eat? You got to think
Yeah.
about all those things. Some of this is on me, Cherith. Like, you
Yeah.
didn't meet that goal because you didn't change things in your life to be able to meet those goals. So just having that time, like I said, to pause and just really think back to, how much of this you possibly caused yourself. So sometimes we
Yeah.
project our anger and frustration onto other things when, sometimes it's just sit back and think about how you can do things differently. And also not having such unrealistic expectations of people. A lot of times we
Mm.
we get frustrated or disappointed or angry because we had this expectation of a person, and we can't control that. We can't
No.
control what other people do. So it's so important to know that, to understand that. And I think that'll help with a lot of the getting
And to
angry.
not take it personally
Yes.
as
Yeah.
well, right?
Yeah.
What people do or think or say, you can't take that personally because
Exactly.
that's on them. It's their
Exactly.
choice to, do that, and you can't take that personally. I just want to comment on what you said about with the music in the car. That's so funny you said that, because for my entire life, I was that person who needed music in the car. I needed music, like if I was in my room or doing studying or whatever, like I always needed music. And then during COVID, I started my meditation practice. And then I started, and I was like, I wonder what would happen if I drove with no music. And
Mhm.
then, and it was incredible. Like I started actually focusing on, just kind of talking through things that I needed to get done or issues,
Yep.
and like, how could I deal with this? How could I say this? How could I do this? Focusing on my goals, focusing on, just gratitude and, affirmations of abundance and things like that. And it was like
Yes.
this really great time to be with myself and figure out what's going on with me. So that was
Yes.
really nice. And last question, Charlotte, what three things are you grateful for today?
Oh, so many, so many.
I know. It's
I
hard.
guess my first thing would be my family. I love my family, husband,
Nice.
kids, love them so much, and I value family so much just because we have had a lot of death in our family in the last few years. So it
Oh, I'm
really makes
sorry.
me appreciate my family more and appreciate the
Yeah.
time that we have together and the memories that we share. I'm thankful for my health. I'm in pretty good health, and I'm thankful for that because I realize that that's not everyone's story. So I appreciate that, and I know that it's a gift. And then another thing is my friends. I have the most
Yeah.
amazing friends who push me to be better. We push each other. I love cheering them on. I love spending time with them, and I'm just really thankful for the relationships that I've had for several years. So that would be three things that I would could
Oh,
say
it's
easily.
beautiful.
I could
Yeah,
go on and
it's
on, but
I
those
know,
are
it's
three.
once you start with a regular gratitude practice, like it's so easy. You start one time, I went running and my iPod died, singing music
Uh-huh.
all the time, right? My iPod died. And then I just started being grateful for all the cells in my body. And like I started with the cells in my feet as I was
Uh-huh.
running. And then I imagined that they were like all the cells turned into like little hearts that were like
Uh-huh.
fluttering. And it was like the best run.
It
Like
is.
I did
Yeah, I
all my
bet.
muscles and yeah, so it's funny. You can find anything to be grateful for, like
Yes.
definitely.
Yes.
Well, I'm so grateful for you, Cherith, just coming
Oh,
on
well,
the show
thank you.
today.
Thank
And
you.
your energy is so beautiful. And I really appreciate how you're helping like teachers, in the US. And I just wish you the most success and
Thank you.
prosperity as you move forward with all of your endeavors. So
All
thank you
right.
so
Thank
much.
you so much. I appreciate you.